Alright, in this video I'm going to break down the top 10 lessons learned from the 2022 AP readings for US, World, and European History and AP Gov. Now, without doubt, the hardest thing to teach students in our AP History and AP Gov classes is the writing, and here is the great conundrum. The best way to get better at teaching the writing is to be a reader for the national exam, but they won't let you be a reader unless you've already been teaching the course for 3 years, and those first 3 years are exactly the time when teachers struggle the most with teaching writing. So, what are you supposed to do? You know Heimler's got you. Number 10. On the SAQ, students had to identify and explain. Now that might confuse you because there are a lot of SAQ prompts that ask the student to identify and explain, especially the older prompts. But the problem this year is that I heard from many AP World History readers that on the SAQ, where it only asked the student to identify information, the readers were instructed to only give the point if the student also explained the evidence. Now I don't know what in the world is happening here because it clearly says in the CED that the College Board themselves wrote that when they ask the student to identify something, it means indicate or provide information about a specific topic without elaboration or explanation. Without explanation. So the point is, none of us are going to change how the College Board does things, and so even if there's a chance that this happens again, I'm going to be instructing everyone to explain evidence when it says only to identify. If you teach AP Euro or US and you're like, it didn't happen in our reading, okay, fine, but it did happen in World, and I don't trust the College Board enough not to do it in other subjects as well. So this advice is for everyone. Number 9, a lot of thesis points were awarded at the end of the essay. At the reading, a thesis can earn the point if it's in the first paragraph or the last paragraph, and since students are writing a first draft in these essays, it's likely that their thinking is going to develop as they write. So I'll say again what I always say. Students need to write their thesis at the beginning and the end. And they shouldn't just copy and paste it in the end. They need to write it again and include the developments of their thought. And if they do, and if this year's reading is any indication, they have a better shot at earning that thesis point. Number 8, many theses did not establish a line of reasoning. I heard this especially from AP government teachers, but the truth is the same could be said of histories as well. I don't know why it's so hard for students to craft an argument because they argue with me all the time. But alas, the language establish a line of reasoning doesn't seem to make sense to them. So my advice is to give them training wheels for their thesis, which is to say give them fill-in-the-blank examples. Because of evidence 1 and evidence 2, the answer to the question in the language of the prompt. Now that's actually more than they need to get the thesis point for the argumentative essay, but if it helps them craft a thesis that establishes a line of reasoning, I'm in. Number 7, knowing dates is super helpful. Now it's true that there are very few explicit dates students need to know that are mentioned in the CED, and Euro probably has the most. But that doesn't mean that dates are not important. One of the perennial issues in student essays is that they struggle to reason chronologically and just to know what happened when. At the very least, I think we need to be teaching them the dates that frame each period and helping them to construct timelines of important events within those periods. It really matters to know that X comes before Y and that Y comes before Z. Number 6, quoting documents is a no-no. Speaking of perennial issues, so much quoting of the documents in the DBQs for all the histories. And look, I get why students do this, like in a high-pressure environment. It probably just feels comforting to write something. But quoting a document gets them no points, and it might even cause them to lose points because by quoting, they may think that they've done the work that they need to do to earn the evidence points, but they haven't. And a really simple exercise to remedy this is to demonstrate to them how to summarize documents without quoting them and then have them do it. It's a really easy bell ringer or exit ticket that pays enormous dividends on their DBQs and SAQs. Number 5, students don't understand what relative importance means. This is another one from the history side, and on this year's APUSH exam, students were asked to evaluate the relative importance of causes of certain events in the LEQ. Many students seem to interpret that as asking why was X important, but we have to make it extremely clear to them that what it's really asking is to identify multiple causes and then rank their importance. Number 4, theses should use the language of the prompt. And we have to be careful here because just quoting the prompt back is not a thesis, but the thesis should use the language of the prompt. So the third LEQ for AP Euro this year was evaluate the most significant similarity between the regimes of Nazi Germany and Soviet Russia in the interwar period. The most reliable way to earn that thesis point is to reuse the significant parts of the prompt. So because evidence 1 and evidence 2, the most significant similarity between the Nazi and Soviet regimes in the interwar period was, and then you say your similarity. It's not elegant, but it works for getting that thesis point. Number 3, students must reference the scenario in order to earn the point. And this is for AP government teachers. One of the biggest causes for missed points on the concept application questions was that students did not refer to the scenario in their answer. And I know what they're thinking, like the reader knows the scenario, so why do I have to talk about it? Yeah, the reader does know the scenario, but only by tying their answers back to the scenario do they prove that they are supporting their answer with evidence. Number 2, students struggle to connect contextualization to their argument. In DBQs and LEQs, contextualization paragraphs struggled this year. There were several makes and models of the contextualization struggle bus, cause, but the most frequently mentioned problem was students failing to connect their contextualization with their thesis. So again, here's where a formula might be helpful. I would say 2 to 3 sentences with specific historical evidence that relate to the prompt, then a transition statement, then a thesis. And that transition statement is what a lot of students were missing that caused them to miss the point. Now, here's a great example of that transition statement, and I'm not going to read it to you, but you can pause it and see how that one sentence paves the way for the thesis and connects the contextualization to the thesis. And number 1, students don't know how to support a thesis with evidence. This is true of history writing, it is true of government writing, and solving this problem would take many more videos, but I'll just say this by way of summary. This is the biggest problem we see across all disciplines, and if we remedy this, everyone is passing their exam. This is the thing, how to argue with evidence to support a thesis. So here's my advice. Teach them to analyze evidence apart from the course content and do it often. For example, my thesis, every day should be nacho day. My evidence, nachos are delicious. And the analysis which shows how my evidence proves my thesis. Because the brain rewards us with dopamine when we eat delicious foods, and dopamine is the cause of a happy life, the more nachos, the happier the life. Now, that may not be wise, but it is certainly arguable. And the students already know how to do this, but they struggle when doing it in the context of history or government class. So the more we can teach them to do it outside the context of the course, the better they'll become. And speaking of building arguments, this video right here will give you all the steps you need for teaching students how to do it, so go check out that next. And if you're in the mood, subscribe and come along. I'll catch you on the flip-flop. Heimler out.